They had never seen a human before, not in person at least. Humans were always a distant concept, tiny, inefficient creatures spoken of in war briefings with the same level of concern one might give to a mild planetary disturbance. A nuisance, at best, a temporary obstacle at worst. The Dominion had categorized them long ago: weak physiology, primitive technology, slow reflexes. And yet here she was, standing on the edge of a battlefield, watching a lone human defy every single fact she had been taught. The air smelled of burning metal and scorched earth, the signature scent of a Dominion invasion. The sky above was torn apart by streaks of energy fire, plasma rounds carving neon ribbons through the darkness. Victory was, as always, inevitable, until it wasn't. The human had been pinned down for nearly 10 minutes now, an eternity in combat terms. He had no energy shield, no cybernetic enhancements, no quantum displacement matrix to phase between dimensions like a proper soldier. He had only that ridiculous outdated weapon, a kinetic firearm, a relic, a thing from the past, the kind of weapon museum curators would gawk at, the kind children would scoff at when they learned about the evolution of warfare, and yet the human was still standing. Captain Vaser narrowed her eyes through the heads-up display of her helmet. The tactical readout confirmed that at least 4 Dominion warriors had already engaged him. Each of them was faster, stronger, and strategically superior in every conceivable way. But they had still fallen. Then, as if the universe wanted to personally insult her intelligence, the human did something absurd. He stood up. In the middle of a war zone. Vaser felt her mandibles twitch in irritation. Is he malfunctioning? Do humans not understand the concept of cover? A single plasma round hissed past his head, close enough to burn the air around him. He didn't flinch. He just stretched, rolled his shoulders, adjusted the strap of his rifle, and muttered under his breath. Her helmet's translator barely caught it. All right, let's see if I still got it. Still got what? Then he fired. One shot, a crude, ugly thing. It didn't glow, didn't crackle with energy, didn't distort the very air around it like Dominion weaponry. Just a simple metal slug propelled by sheer combustion. It shouldn't have mattered, and yet Vaser watched in horrified fascination as that single bullet traveled an impossible distance. It twisted through the air like a living thing, threading between falling debris, passing through the aftershock of an explosion, compensating for the shifting gravity of the battlefield. Her HUD frantically calculated the trajectory. It didn't make sense. No mechanical targeting system could have adjusted that fast. No predictive AI could have calculated those microsecond shifts. Then the bullet hit its mark. A Dominion elite, a warrior who had stood undefeated in over 100 skirmishes, jerked back violently as the projectile punched through his energy. Shield, like it was paper. The impact sent a shockwave through his suit, disabling its internal dampeners and causing him to crumple before he could even process what had happened. Silence fell over the battlefield. For the first time in years, Vaser felt something new, uncertainty. This wasn't possible. She activated her comlink. Squad leader, report. Nothing, just the crackling static of the fallen warrior's disabled suit. The human, meanwhile, casually ejected the spent round from his rifle. He whistled. Damn, thought I missed. Vaser's claws tightened. He thought he missed? She zoomed in on his face. There was no fear, no desperation, just a lazy, almost bored amusement, like this was just another day for him. Then the second absurd thing happened. Dominion reinforcements arrived. A full squad, bristling with energy weapons and armor that could withstand a direct impact from a railgun, the kind of force that could level a city in under an hour. The human looked up, saw them, and sighed. Crap. Then, as if the universe itself was trying to humiliate her species, he smiled. Not the grim acceptance of a soldier who knew death was coming, not the defiant grin of a warrior making a last stand. No, this was the smile of a man who wasn't worried. Vaza's entire understanding of human weakness had just been shattered, and somehow she had the distinct and unsettling feeling that this was just the beginning. Jack Carter had been in bad situations before. This one was definitely in the top 5. He stood on the battlefield, watching as a fresh squad of angry-looking alien warriors advanced toward him in that slow, menacing way that heavily armored soldiers do when they think they've already won. His rifle was down to its last round. His backup weapon was out of ammo. His emergency combat knife was currently embedded in the last guy he took down. So yeah, bad situation. Jack let out a long sigh, rubbing the back of his neck. Well, this is gonna suck. Across the field, Captain Vaza watched him with laser focus. She was still reeling from what she had just seen. A human, a species deemed too slow, too primitive, too weak, had just outshot one of the Dominion's finest warriors with nothing but an antique rifle and what appeared to be sheer arrogance. And now he was smiling at an entire squad of heavily armed Dominion elites. Jack cracked his knuckles. All right. Who's next? Visa's mind raced. This isn't possible. Humans don't move like this. She had studied their physiology. They were too slow, too fragile. And yet this one was weaving through trained Dominion warriors like he had been fighting them his entire life. One of the elites snapped. He rushed forward, plasma blade igniting in a brilliant arc of blue energy. Jack didn't dodge. Instead, he did something worse. He caught the alien's wrist mid-swing. Visa actually gasped. Jack twisted, using leverage and body weight to redirect the momentum. The elite flew over his own blade, crashing into the dirt. Jack turned to the remaining warriors. Look, fellas, I get it. You're all trying really hard. He gestured to the 2 groaning soldiers on the ground. But maybe you want to call it quits before things get embarrassing, the Dominion squad leader growled. You are nothing. Jack smirked. I don't know, man. I feel like I'm at least a little something. Then the squad leader activated his suit's gravitic pulse. A high-pitched hum filled the air. Jack had no chance. The pulse slammed into him like a meteor, lifting him off his feet and hurling him across the battlefield. He hit the ground hard, rolling several times before crashing into a chunk of debris. Vaza clenched her jaw. That's it. That has to be it. The dust settled. Jack groaned. Okay. Ow. He sat up. Vaza's stomach dropped. Jack cracked his neck, rubbing the back of his head. That really hurt. I mean, wow, my chiropractor's going to be pissed. The squad leader stared. Jack got to his feet. The battlefield went silent. Then he grinned. All right. My turn. Vaza had no idea what was about to happen next, but she was certain of one thing, the Dominion's assumption about human weakness. It was dead wrong. And she was beginning to suspect she had been lied to her entire life. Jack rolled his shoulders, stretching his arms as if he had just woken up from a nap, instead of being thrown across a battlefield by a gravity pulse. The Dominion Warriors hesitated. Vesa could see it, tiny shifts in stance, the way they adjusted their grips on their weapons, the flicker of uncertainty in their body language. A minute ago, they had moved with the unshakable confidence of elite soldiers. Now they looked like men standing on the edge of a cliff, realizing too late that the ground beneath them wasn't solid. Jack saw it too, and worse, he was enjoying it. "Now that we've established you guys hit like an angry massage chair," he said, "can we maybe talk this out?" Silence. Jack sighed. "Yeah, didn't think so." Then he moved. One moment he was standing in the wreckage, the next he was inside their formation. Vesa barely saw it. Jack didn't run, he didn't charge. He just flowed. The first Dominion warrior barely had time to react before Jack slammed a fist into his helmet. Not a wild punch, but a precise strike aimed right where the armor's kinetic dampeners were weakest. The impact sent the warrior stumbling. Backward, dazed. The second elite lunged. Too slow. Jack sidestepped, tripped the alien mid-stride, and let him fall straight into his own squad mate. Vesa's mind raced. How? This wasn't human combat doctrine. This wasn't trained military discipline. This was something else, something instinctual. The squad leader roared, raising his plasma rifle. Jack moved first. With a fluid, impossible motion, he twisted into the warrior's guard, ripped the rifle from his grip, and before the trigger could be pulled, he tossed it over his shoulder, like it was trash. The Dominion squad leader snapped. He lunged, plasma blade igniting in fury, and Jack was already behind him. No one saw how he moved. Not even Vesa. 1 second the squad leader was attacking. The next, he was unconscious on the ground. Jack let out a breath, rubbing his neck. "Man, I really thought you guys would put up more of a fight." Silence. Then, to her own horror, Vesa laughed. She hadn't laughed in years, not in combat, not in training. But something about this ridiculous, impossible human made it happen. Jack grinned. "Hey, I got one! Finally, I was starting to think you guys were humor impaired." Vesa stepped forward. "Human." Jack turned to her, curious. "Captain Mandibles, what's up?" She narrowed her eyes. "You are not normal." "Yeah, I get that a lot." "You shouldn't be able to do what you just did." "Technically, no," Jack admitted. "But I have a talent for ignoring physics when it's inconvenient." Vesa studied him. He was grinning, sure, but she could see the calculation in his eyes. He wasn't just fast. He was thinking 5 moves ahead, and that was dangerous. She folded her arms. "A test, then?" Jack raised an eyebrow. "Oh, I like where this is going." "If you can replicate that impossible shot you made earlier," she said, slow and deliberate, "I will personally bring this to the Dominion War Council." Jack paused. For the first time since this started, she saw a flicker of genuine surprise on his face. Then he smirked. "All right. But if I do, you owe me a drink." Vesa frowned. Drink?" "Yeah, you know, a beverage, alcohol, or whatever you guys drink to celebrate humiliating yourselves in combat," she sighed. "Fine," Jack grinned. "Oh, Captain Mandibles, you are so going to regret that." Vesa had the distinct and unsettling feeling that she already did. Jack Carter took up position atop a chunk of broken Dominion machinery, the setting sun casting an almost dramatic glow behind him. His rifle, the same outdated, ridiculous projectile weapon, rested lazily in his hands, like he had all the time in the world. The target was an impossible distance away, a single, tiny floating drone, barely visible to the naked eye. Vesa folded her arms. "You miss, and you owe me a proper explanation." Jack smirked. "And if I don't?"
"Miss, you still owe me an explanation, but now I owe you a drink," he grinned. "I like those odds." The remaining Dominion warriors, bruised, confused,
and quietly reconsidering their entire species' stance on humanity, watched in silence. Jack exhaled, his body relaxed in a way that sent a strange shiver down Vaser's spine. It was like he wasn't just aiming, he was becoming part of the
shot, and then crack. The gunshot was almost anticlimactic. No energy pulse.
no plasma explosion, just a simple, sharp crack that echoed across the wasteland. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the drone, the one that had been hovering so far away it was practically a speck, dropped like a stone. Vaser's brain stopped working. Jack stood up, stretching. "Well, looks like I win." Silence. One of the Dominion soldiers just sat down. Another shook his head slowly, as if trying to wake up from a bad dream. Vaser, to her horror, realized her mandibles were slightly open in shock. Jack saw and grinned.
"Ah, Cap, don't look so surprised. I told you I never miss." Vaser snapped her mouth shut, furious at herself. "Explain." Jack chuckled. "What, the shot? That was easy. All I had to do was calculate wind resistance, gravity, temperature shifts, barrel heat, and—" He waved a hand. "Honestly, you wouldn't believe me if I told you." "I already don't believe you." Jack sighed, shaking his head.
"You know, for a species that's supposed to be hyper-intelligent, you guys are real bad at handling stuff that doesn't fit in your little superior race narrative," Vaser bristled. "The Dominion is still superior," Jack laughed, a full, genuine, amused as hell laugh. "Oh, Cap, you are adorable." Vaser hated how much that irritated her. Jack slung his rifle over his shoulder, stepping closer. "Look, I get it. Your people spent, what, centuries, millennia, convincing themselves that humans were weak. So when one of us rolls up and starts
handing out free combat lessons, it shakes your worldview a little." Vaser narrowed her eyes. "Are all humans like you?" Jack snorted. "Hell no, most wouldn't have made it past the first round. But the thing is, you don't know which ones will."
That bothered her. Vaser had always operated on certainty. Dominion superiority was a fact, but Jack Carter was a variable, unpredictable, unquantifiable. How many more of him were out there? She shook her head. "This doesn't change the Dominion's
stance on humanity." Jack grinned. "Oh, sure it does. You just don't know it yet." Vaser hated that he was probably right. With a sigh, she signaled her squad. "We're leaving," Jack blinked. "That's it?"
No dramatic last-ditch fight. No, "I'll get you next time" human speech. "I am a captain, not a cartoon villain," Jack smirked. "Could have fooled me." Vaser ignored him and turned toward her ship. Then Jack cleared his throat. "Ahem. Excuse."
"Me, but I believe somebody owes me a drink." Vaser froze. Her squad turned to her. Jack just stood there, grinning like a smug bastard. Her mandibles twitched. "Fine."
Jack whooped. Vaser sighed. She had no idea what she had just unleashed, but she had the distinct feeling this wasn't the last she'd see of Jack Carter, and that thought was far more terrifying than losing a battle.